You ready, Abby?
I'm ready, Brooke. Let's welcome everybody back. Welcome everybody to episode 1 of First Novel Problems. Welcome, everyone.
I can't believe you talked me into this, Abby.
I did talk you into it. And I had to really twist your arm and really give it an extra yank to get you to say, yeah, you do it, right? Write all these books, 126 or 27. I don't know what you're up to now.
I don't know either. And I think it was more of at first I was like, oh yeah, this would be nothing. And now that I'm like we're diving into it and we're getting ready, I'm just kind of like, what did I get myself into? But
You're like, oh my God, I said I was going to write a book, like a whole book, start to finish, with, granted, you took some creative writing classes in college, so you have a little bit of an idea about what you're getting into, right?
yeah, but that was like freshman year when you're still partying nonstop. I shouldn't admit that on camera. So I maybe I retained some of it, but
Maybe, maybe not.
yeah, let's go with that. Let's
Okay,
have it.
but let's start here.
Yes.
Yeah. So everybody has a different spark that they start with, and this is one of our coworker Hank's favorite things to talk to published writers about, which is like, where did your idea for this book come from? And so when I said to you, hey, we should teach you how to write a book, and you were like, heck yeah, let's do it, because let's face it, my energy plus your energy was like unstoppable. We're like, yeah, everybody get on this train. We're all writing books.
Right.
So you already had an idea in your head.
Yeah.
So what is the spark of your idea that we are going to fan into a flame that is a novel?
So it actually stems from real life. And I feel like everybody says that. Everybody starts their book like it stems from real life and a real life story. And so I think it was a little bit of that, but now don't come for me in the comments. I'm going to say this now. But like, I really like historical fiction, historical romance. And I think, and this is no like shade to my husband, but I feel like all of us have that one person or that one story in our past. The one I'm pulling from is from high school / college that you almost wish you could write a different ending to, like, so
Mm.
that's where I'm leaning towards, like, the story. And I know I've been an artist for years. I know the creative process is messy, and I am not afraid to show how messy it can be. So I really want to kind of take that experience that I went through, but then also use my favorite genre of reading, which is historical fiction, really more of that historical romance, and kind of create a story for that. So,
Oh my God, do you know what I love? Was that you just said, I want to write a different ending for something that happened in real life. That's
yes.
like a super cool idea, just in general, to take and run with for an entire book.
Hmm.
Okay, so the original ending, so to speak, happy or not happy? I'm taking it, if we're talking romance, this was not a happily ever after because you are married to someone else now.
It was amicable. Amicable.
Okay.
I can't talk. I'm sorry. But it was, we went our separate ways, but he did come back to me like several years later and told me, like, real life, not story, that he wished he would have done things differently.
Oh,
And that he,
interesting. Okay.
yeah. So it's actually coming more from his perspective. And I'm not going to lie, I thought about it too. But yeah, that's kind of,
So is this going to be sort of a more character-driven book instead of a more plot-driven book, it sounds like? Do you know what I mean by that? Would be,
no,
okay,
no.
my
Maybe,
first question.
yeah.
Okay. So character-driven book is going to be a story where the internal arc of change for your protagonist is sort of really what you're reading for. So books that you would see that in, right, would be oftentimes women's fiction, historical fiction, romance, right? There's always an arc of change in romance. Generally, when you read a romance book, you start at the beginning and there's some sort of meet cute, and by the time you end, it's a happily ever after or a happily for now, right? So everyone knows the beginning and the end points somewhat, right? But they're reading to see the arc of change happen. So then there are books that are more plot driven books. So things like thrillers, adventure, mystery, where people are reading them to go on that adventure or that quest with the characters. So it's more about kind of the what is happening.
Hmm.
Character driven novels, it's more about who is the book about and how are they changing. And so it sounds to me like you're drawn more towards that lump of books that are about the main character and how they change over the course of the novel.
Yes, because and that's where I think we'll have to like go through the exercises and stuff because even though there is like this theme to it and this is part of it, there's almost like a component to the story that I want to tell that's even kind of outside of romance. I think that this is a part of it, but then there's also like this nagging, like, is that the story I want to tell about this time in the main character's life? Or is it more just about the main character themselves? So I'm kind of going back and forth.
So you're kind of looking at right now, you want to tell a story, there's a real life component to it, but you're trying to figure out is romance the plot or the subplot?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to tell us the names of any of the characters, or is that something that you're going to work out because this is based on real life, but I'm going to assume you're going to fictionalize it in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I have to work it all out. I don't have any of the names or anything. It's loosely based on real life. I guess I could put it that way. So
Okay. Okay. So this is kind of it's fun to see how you are coming to the page because I start in a totally different way. Like a
really,
totally different way.
am I doing it wrong?
You are not doing it wrong. You are probably doing it the way most people do it. And when I tell you how I do it, you're going to be like, "Are you a weirdo?" And the answer is yes. So one of the things that I try and do, like, and this is just how my brain works, is I think about books that I loved
Hmm.
and how I could combine them together to make something new. So the last book that I wrote, actually, I have it sitting right here, this one. And if you look at the front cover, it's actually, in a way, sort of perfect. So it's these two um, little boys. You can see they're smaller than the flowers in the field, and they're driving a car made out of an old coffee can, right? So when I first got the idea for this book, I had my coach who said to me, you know, you're probably going to write a book at some point about your misfit farm because I live on a farm with a bunch of rescued animals. And she's like, you're going to write something about a misfit farm. And that idea kind of sat with me for a little while. And I was like, yeah, I kind of want to write something that's a little like Charlotte's Web, right? So there's my
Hmm.
first book. I was like, I loved Charlotte's Web as a kid. I loved the way Charlotte's Web made me feel as a kid. Um, it really stuck with me, like those characters and Wilbur. And I didn't eat bacon for a really long time after I read that book, right? So that was the first one. And then I'm like, but what am I going to do with it to make that story mine?
Hmm.
And I was like, you know, another book that I loved as a kid was The Borrowers by Mary Norton, about the little tiny people that lived in the walls of the house and they borrowed things from the big people.
Hmm.
So that was the second piece that kind of came along, right? So I was like, well, what if I wrote something that was like Charlotte's Web meets The Borrowers? Well, how am I going to make that my own? And I was like, oh, I'd love it if there were two little brothers. And I named them one day while I was in my chicken shed feeding the chickens. And I was like, oh, I should call those brothers Scratch and Peck, right?
That's
So
awesome.
here I had two books and I had my two main characters, but I had no story. I didn't know who these brothers were. I didn't know what they were doing on the farm. I mean, I had nothing. And I let that sit with me for years. I'm not kidding you, years. Every time I went out to feed the animals, every stinking morning, I would think, Charlotte's Web meets the borrowers. All right, Scratch and Peck, are you going to talk to me this morning? What is this book about? And it wasn't until I got my third comp. So we call them comparative titles. If you're a
Hmm.
writer, if you're a librarian, you call them read-alikes, right? But my third comparative title, which was not actually a book, was the piece that made it all slide into place. And that was The Dukes of Hazzard. Okay, so now my cover is probably making a lot of sense to you because the
Yes.
moment I realized, oh, Dukes of Hazzard is my third comp, all the pieces started to slide together for me about what they were doing in the barnyard, what was happening. They're the outlaws who are actually the good guys. How can a kid relate to that? Well, a kid would probably relate to it because kids oftentimes feel like they're not seen for their good intentions and they've only done things bad when they didn't intend to do something that was bad. And
Yeah.
that's what sort of got my wheels turning and the story started coming together. And so that was one of the things I wanted to leave you with. If it's at all helpful, your brain might not work this way. But if you're a big reader and you're a big reader of historical fiction, are there any books that you could sort of put together that the vibe of those things would sort of hold your story in your hands?
Yes. And what's funny is that I have that outlier book that it's been in the back of my head for forever because literally when I read this book, it's not historical fiction. I think it's actually nonfiction, possibly. It's just one of those that when I read this book, my husband was literally looking at me like, can you breathe right now? Because I was laughing so hard.
What book is
And
that?
so it's Furiously Happy. Um, I highly recommend it if you have any kind of sense of humor. I was giving Hank crap earlier this week about rereading stuff. It's one that I think I am going to reread because but it's Furiously Happy. I can't think of the name, the author. Let me look it up real fast. Um, but by Jenny Lawson. I was like, I know her name. It was on the tip. But yeah, highly recommend it. It gave me a whole new appreciation for bad taxidermy. That's all I'm going to say. Yes. Especially if like you look at the front of the book, it might give a little bit of more away, but it's just like this insane raccoon on the front of the book. So
So, am I going to have talking animals in all my stories, but you're going to have dead taxidermied animals in your
oh my
story?
god, like I don't want to give away the book because I'm actually probably gonna send it to you, Abby, if you have not read it. But yeah, she like scares her husband with taxidermy throughout the book. Like she buys these bad taxidermy raccoons and hides them around her house to scare her husband. So there's Facebook groups and everything about bad taxidermy. I highly recommend it if you ever have a chance. So
All right. Well, everybody, that's what you have to look forward to in First Novel Problems as Brooke writes her book where she changes the ending of real life to include some really bad taxidermy and is furiously happy. So if you're in and you want to follow along, make sure you subscribe to the Dabble Writer YouTube channel so that you can follow this adventure as we help Brooke sort out her first book. Hey, that
yeah,
rhymes.
I know I'm excited, and I'm also interested to dive into the genre conversation because I know that's going to be one that I feel like it's going to give me guideposts
Mm-hmm.
from like our conversation. So I'm really excited to dive into the whole realm of genre and then see how it goes. So
Well, that's what we will talk about next time. Thanks for joining us, everybody.